Brought to you by PrayLatin.com, makers of prayer cards featuring complete English phonetic renderings of Latin pronunciations.
The Vatican no longer believes in dogma. That's not that surprising, given the incredible nonsense we've seen come out of Rome in the last decade. But it's true, the Vatican no longer believes in dogma, and no longer believes that those who are separated from the Church by heresy and schism cannot be saved unless they are in communion with the Church. They don't believe this. They actually deny the things that previous pontiffs have said, that are declaratory statements. That, for instance, in the case of what we're about to talk about here, Pope Leo XIII formally declared that Anglican holy orders are null and void. Now, some Anglicans, in response to that, had their holy orders confirmed by schismatic groups with authentic orders, old Romans or old Catholics in the UK, as one example. But in general, the Vatican doesn't believe this anymore. And as I hinted at here just a moment ago, this is about the Anglican Church. I mentioned in a live stream that the Vatican was in talks with conservative Anglican dioceses to allow them to come into communion with the Church without having to actually become Catholic. People didn't believe it when I said it, but they kind of did also because, of course, the Vatican would, unfortunately, in this day and age. So we turn to that story now, which comes to us from stream.org with this headline. Rome takes historic step towards full communion with conservative Anglicans. Groundbreaking agreement will include only those Anglican dioceses that do not, quote, ordain female priests. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? You'd be wrong if you thought that sounded pretty good. Why? Isn't unity a good thing? Isn't the repair of the schism between the Anglican Church and the Catholic Church good? Yes, that would be. But this is an insult to all the Anglicans who actually became Catholic. This is an insult to them, because those who did so already accepted the Church's teachings, the dogmas of the faith that separate Catholics from Protestants, the Marian dogmas, papal primacy, all the rest of it. They accepted those. They submitted to those. This is an insult to them. This is also an insult to the truth itself, which means this is an insult to our blessed Lord, because they are not being required to affirm Catholic dogmas. They're not being required to become Catholic, yet somehow they will now be in communion with the papacy. That doesn't make any sense on its face. This isn't a partial communion idea. You are either in communion or you're not. They would say they're in full communion with the Catholic Church but are not Catholic. You cannot be in full communion with the Catholic Church and not be Catholic. This is nonsense on its face, and yet these talks have been going on for some time. And it looks like they may come to fruition. From the article, quote, the Vatican is taking historic strides towards achieving, quote, full communion with Anglicans who do not ordain for female priests. It is doing so by recognizing Anglican holy orders and churches, but not requiring them to merge with or convert to Roman Catholicism. We are scheduled to begin our talks at the Vatican this coming September 26th to 27th. Bishop Ray Sutton, presiding bishop of the Reformed Episcopal Church in the U.S., announced in an Ecumenical Relations Task Force report of the Anglican Church in North America College of Bishops. The ACNA bishops, who oversee 128,000 Anglicans in more than 1,000 congregations across Canada, Mexico, and the United States, met during a provincial council from June 20th to 25th at St. Vincent's College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. End quote. Did you catch that? The Anglicans will not be required to become Catholic, while recognizing the authority of the Pope in some way. They will be in full communion, whatever that means. They'll also be able to continue with their Anglican theological errors. Even worse, their holy orders will be recognized as valid in a direct repudiation of the declaration by Pope Leo XIII that their holy orders are null and utterly void, meaning their priests aren't priests at all, that their Eucharist is not valid, and the rest of it. This is sacrificing truth for unity. And if Leo XIII is correct, and yes, he is, that their holy orders are null and void, what does that mean about the Eucharist that they will confess once they come into, quote, full communion with the Catholic Church without having to become Catholic? You begin to see the problem here. But this sacrifice of truth for unity has another name. It's called synodality. This is what synodality looks like in practice. This is what that study document on the papacy looks like in practice. We don't need to bother with the truth. We just need to be united as friends. Why can't we all just be friends is the theme song of this synod and of this action that you're seeing here. Now, this is based explicitly on not having to accept Catholic, infallibly defined dogmas as being true. Dogmas defined by ecumenical councils and by popes under their own solemn authority. They don't have to accept it, while still being somehow in communion with the Catholic Church. Looming large over this is the excommunication of Archbishop Vigano, by the way. I thought I'd throw that out there because he rejects Vatican II. How can he get excommunicated for that when they're going to allow these Anglican bishops and priests to be in full communion with Rome without having to actually become Catholic and be Catholic? It's a question that I don't understand how they got to this logic. Back to the article. Quote, according to the ecumenical report obtained by the Stream, the union between Rome and Orthodox Anglicans aims to be based on a Malta II proposal, a manifesto that revives the Malta I agreement reached between Pope Paul VI and the Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. Michael Ramsey, in 1966. The Malta I agreement resolved to overcome differences between Catholics and Anglicans in matters like Petrine primacy, papal infallibility, and Mariology by ensuring that neither communion is tied to a positive acceptance of all the beliefs and devotional practices of the other. According to Malta I, unity and reciprocal acceptance of holy orders would be founded on the acknowledgement that each communion, quote, embraces the fundamental truths outlined in the ecumenical creeds and the shared tradition of the ancient church. The Malta report put forward a way to unity and communion between Rome and Anglicanism without requiring amalgamation or conversion to each other's churches, Sutton's report underlined, end quote. This is theological relativism, pure and simple. But that also sounds like, to me anyway, that it undermines the very core, most basic claim of the Catholic Church, that the Church was founded by Jesus Christ on the rock of Peter, meaning that the Catholic Church is the ancient Church, that the ancient Church was the Catholic Church. This undermines all of it. And for what? It does that in the name of ecumenical unity. What's the purpose of this unity if you are not truly united? You cannot be united except united in the truth. It's impossible to be united in anything but the truth. And the truth here in this case means the theologies of the church, the teachings on Our Lady, on the Eucharist, anything else you care to name, papal infallibility. They're not required to believe in papal infallibility. This is what the destroyer has wrought since he's been running the church. This is what is being wrought. Theological relativism. By the way, this effort is being led by the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, meaning by Cardinal Fernandez ultimately, which is weird. These kinds of dialogues between the Catholic Church and external groups is typically run by the Dicastery for Promoting Christian Unity, which, by the way, Cardinal Fernandez has an advisory role in there. I didn't quite understand why he did when that news first broke, but now I understand it. Now it's very clear. Are you surprised by this at all? Does this surprise you in the slightest, that they're going to allow groups to come into communion with Rome in full communion while they deny dogmas of the faith? And they have permission to deny dogmas of the faith while they run around with likely invalid holy orders. What do you think about this? Let me know in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. So does sharing this on social media. That helps too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.